All right, so we are live. Thank you, Oak and Dagreenshiz for joining me tonight. Appreciate you both to come on for this kind of hangout and discussion about. I think I titled the video something like what makes a good collectible, and I think we'll really start probably by answering it like personally, kind of get into a conversation of what we like to collect, maybe what we've liked to collect, kind of like our journey, because I know for me it shifts around and sort of what what excites me, and I think that could be a fun conversation. And then there are other hot topics, and we can certainly like take more general questions from the audience. I am embarrassed to say this. So I watch these guys' podcast every week. It's called the Slabbed podcast. Am I getting that right?
Yep, that's right.
I check and looked up the name. I literally watch it pretty much every week. I'm a big fan of it. So I would highly recommend those who are like missing, I mean, there's plenty of content now too, but who would like a little more extra Pokemon content, to go check that out. Because these guys are just super, like they just really enjoy collecting. There's no like egos in the conversation. It doesn't feel like there's any agenda to me. It's like just two guys who are like knowledgeable, sharing about what they're passionate about, agree with some of their takes, disagree with some of their takes, and that's sort of like that's the enjoyment of it is
exactly.
And they disagree with each other often, which is kind of like enjoyable to kind of see their different takes, and that they really share, I think, how they honestly feel about things, which is nice. So anything you guys want to say about, feel free to plug your podcast a bit more, or introduce yourselves. I think most people probably know who you guys are, but if you want to do a brief introduction or say anything about what you guys are going on, we could start there.
Go ahead, Oak.
How do I follow that? That was such a kind intro.
That was nice, kind words, man. Appreciate it.
Oh my God. I think a few people have probably seen me floating about in different places and like heard of the Discord and stuff. So I probably don't like need to go too much into detail, but for those that haven't heard of me, my name's Oak, but people call me Oak. Professor Oak is like my alias, I guess, online. And I collect Pokemon. Pokemon when I was a kid because I loved it and it was fun, and that's what most of us did when we were kids. We collected Pokemon and played with the cards and stuff, and was excited by the games and the show and everything else. And as that developed, and I realized I had adult money, and there was a lot more stuff out there. Things changed a little bit. It got actually more serious into it than I even was as a kid. Things became more realistic. And it's funny about you saying that just then, Jake. You're talking about listening to our podcast and like really enjoying it and stuff, and getting satisfaction from it. Like I feel the same about you, and I think one of the biggest things that spurred me to like investigate other things was your channel and like the stuff you was talking about, because I was watching and following a lot of Pokemon channels, and you had what I felt like was a Pokemon channel, but you like talked about other things, and you were saying like you were buying Star Wars cards and like Lord of the Rings and some Marvel, and I remember you talking in some episodes, and I was like, oh, you can collect more than one thing. Okay. Yeah. I guess I hadn't really like logically, consciously thought about it before, other than like admiring it from afar. And since that, since listening to you talk about it and start kind of surrounding myself by people like Swami and, some of the guys in his Discord, I've bought way too many other things outside of Pokemon. Like it's a bit of a rabbit hole. So for me, like, I don't know if we're getting into the collecting part right now.
Let's jump into it.
Bit of an intro.
What do you look for, in those collectibles, and kind of what catches your eye? I'd love to hear.
Yeah, I think that's a really key point. We just said what catches your eye. I think it is a little bit of like magpies, like some ravens and some birds. Something catches their eye, they'll grab it, take it back to the nest. They'll try and impress the friends, a mate or whatever, and it just excites them, I guess, to get a feeling, to grab it. And I think there's just that there's like a literal natural element to us to like be excited by something visually and like want that. I think in many areas, whether it's food or people or collectibles, a lot of different areas. And the more I've looked, since hearing people like yourself and, other creators talk about other cards and comics and collectibles, stuff like that, the more I've explored and looked at that stuff, the more I've been like, oh, I want that. Oh, I want that. I want that. And that's interesting and that's fun. So my collection is like, it's a bit crazy. Yeah. There's a little bit of everything all over the place. I did collect Pokemon, specifically Pikachu PSA 10s for quite a while. At one point, I was number 2 in the world in the PSA registry. Not a whole lot of people in there, so like, don't get me wrong, I probably wasn't actually
all 4 people. Congratulations.
Yeah. There was a few. There was definitely a few, but I was up there because I went in a burst and I bought a bunch, and then I kind of felt like because I did well with it, there's a little bit of feeling of like, well, the prices are going down a little bit. I could probably buy these back at a later time, when they're a bit cheaper. But also like felt a little bit like I achieved some of that goal, like some of that collecting. And then I was like, okay, what else? I get back to the magpie feeling. Like, what else is exciting? What else can I look at and play with and talk about and explore? And it's a spider web for sure. As I'm sat next to a Spider-Man comic, which I would have never bought a year ago, so right. Yeah, kind of all over the place. So that's where I'm at right now. That's like probably the basic. We should talk more about collectibles, but I want to hear Greenie talk a little bit about his little journey to where he's at right now.
Yeah, appreciate it. Again, Jake, appreciate you having me on. Me and Oak, I think we're on your channel one other time in January or something, and there was like 37 other people inside here, so it was we probably got a total of about 120 seconds of communication in the entire live stream. So
yeah, those are not it's like kind of fun seeing like a bunch of faces of people that you like in the hobby for people, but it's not the best for actually hearing from anyone.
Yeah, exactly. And it's always like the 1 or 2 guys that got to be the alpha that talk 90% of the time, and then the other guys will just interject a little bit sometimes. So this is way more. 4 or less is kind of my number. When it's over 4, I kind of am a little suspect to join a live stream, but this is awesome. So again, appreciate all the kind words. Doing the podcast has been awesome. We're half a year into it, which is crazy to think that we've been doing it this long. 1 episode a week, which is really cool. Haven't skipped a week yet. So obviously Oak has been an awesome partner in it, and it's been really fun. So thoroughly enjoying it. It's good talking the hobby at least once a week for an hour and with a good mate. So I enjoy it. Collectibles though, for me, I just my little quick backstory. I got back into Pokemon in April, basically of 2020, when you first uploaded your first video, almost the same month, which is crazy. But did not dive deep into grading and all that probably for about 9 months. But before Pokemon, I was collecting like almost nothing. My life was like dedicated to work. I'm sad at that. Like I played video games. Like I would buy and sell like Rocket League items on Xbox 360, taking stuff from like 3-year-olds. It was not a good situation. So it was, I was collecting skins in video games is kind of what I was doing. So I guess I was collecting something, but that developed when COVID hit in 2020. Was able to I was on Facebook Marketplace chilling and was able to find some collections and looked at Pokemon because I didn't really have any childhood cards of anything, nothing. It was 0. So just re-sparked everything. And then I grew up playing Yu-Gi-Oh! I'd never played Pokemon. I collected Pokemon, then got into Yu-Gi-Oh! And played Yu-Gi-Oh! For several years and thoroughly enjoyed that. So I'm huge collector boy into Yu-Gi-Oh! But I love buying and selling collectibles. But collectibles for me, it doesn't have to be like a monetary thing. I have some like random things. You'll look in my shelf in my closet and be like, oh, that's pretty dope. It just reminds me of something. Like I'm collecting it just because it reminds me of something in the past. It's pretty much like the nostalgia thing, attachment to it. That's where that's how I think of a collectible. Like I'm not going to collect a freaking Sprite can because I never drink Sprite or never did. Like it's got to be something that helps me remember it back in the old days, essentially. So I feel like all the old men now are collecting vintage cars and stuff like that. They have some sports cards, and maybe if they're a certain special somebody, they have comic books. But it's really just remembering the childhood and stuff like that, what we grew up. Because I got tons of video games, like you can see behind me. I was huge into video games, so I have pretty much the video game series from all the ones I ever played. So I thoroughly enjoy the video games, the Yu-Gi-Oh cards, Pokemon. I'm all over the place. Got my first comic book from Professor Oak, which is pretty cool. I've been wanting one. Got a Time magazine with Henry Ford because I'm in the auto industry. It's pretty sweet stuff. There's so much different crap. You can spend so much time on eBay.
Yeah. There's so many different things like that I enjoy in collecting and reasons why I enjoy collecting. And it's definitely shifted and changed over time for me. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about sort of my journey, and then you guys can kind of pick up. And then I want to ask you guys kind of direct questions about like some of the things I've experienced to see if that's like similar for you. So for me, I think it's just like a collecting gene that I've had to some degree. My dad is a big, like massive collector of stuff. And as a kid, I used to go out, my dad and I used to go to like, flea markets and, what's it called? Like, around Massachusetts, we used to go to like Brimfield and all of these places that have a lot of these like great antique stores and massive markets. And we used to hunt this, porcelain that's called Herond, which is, this like handmade porcelain that is, connects to like where my family is from in Europe. Basically, that's like why he started collecting this sort of like seemingly random porcelain. But it was just they were all different animals and different figurines, and so that was my first experience, kind of like the hunting with my father, looking for deals, talking about trying to find stuff that would complete our collection, that would improve our collection, trying to find rare stuff, learning about new pieces, like all of that type of excitement that's like still in it for me. And then I think I got super into playing. I played a lot of hours of RuneScape at one point in my life, and RuneScape was a massive, like, that was like, I think my first appearance, like, I started businesses and different things like selling soda can, like I'd buy a 6-pack at Walgreens or something, and then I'd go to the park and sell it to the moms for like, $3-4 a soda. And I was always kind of like in that, but like RuneScape was where it really took off, the sort of like the market interest with the sort of like collecting and maybe at times hoarding of goods and resources and things. And so I think I've always been attracted to like the economy part of it, and then the finding and completing part of it. And then I think of those two things as separate. And then I think the third thing is, what does the actual piece do for you separately from those two things? And when I like look at items in my collection, it's like, well, how much of this is like a chase rarity, money, kind of fun economic thing, which is why I like to collect it. How much of it is that the art or the story or the history of the specific piece connects to me very genuinely, despite sort of the rarity or the value, and then how much of it is separate, even kind of separate from both of those things, just sort of the completionist in me, the sort of learning about something and then wanting to the fun of kind of, and the challenge of kind of tracking all of those items down and putting together something that maybe other people haven't done, or not everyone did, or maybe it's not even about other people. A lot of the times, maybe it can also just be about me doing something kind of cool and a little bit difficult and challenging, and the fun and enjoyment of that completion, of feeling like you've completed something. And then obviously when all three of those things line up, which they did for Pokemon, by the way, for me, when I started in particular, it was like a home run. It was like I'm the dopamine's firing on all fronts, and engaging in this hobby on all three of those things. So I guess I'll turn it to you guys. Does that stuff resonate with you? Do you feel like you've gone after or searched or felt more driven by the financial economic part, or more driven by the collector completionist, or more driven by the specific artwork, the specific property, as you've kind of gone through your collecting journey?
Go ahead, Oak.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there because there's so many ways to look at it, right? You just mentioned like the three main pillars that kind of hold it up, and yeah, there's so many things that run through my mind when I think about buying. I think more specifically than collecting. So am I buying to collect? Am I buying because of like the cost of it is cheap and I think I could do something with it in the future or now, whatever. Like there's a lot of different things. I think what I'm exploring for the most part depends on what I do with it. So if I'm looking for something to collect, usually it's two of those three pillars you mentioned, where it's either I'm really excited about it and I feel like connected to it, or it's part of like the completionism part. I think I've drifted away from the completion feeling, and it's still there. It's still a little bit like I feel like I should kind of get the other thing that connects to that, or get the other thing that like builds it out, so I have the complete thing. But it's like a small percentage. The biggest percentage for me right now is stuff that like catches my eye. You know, I was talking about the magpie situation. Like genuinely, if I'm excited and I think it's cool, like I've been buying it. You know, I bought a couple of like $2 cards the other day, you know, just because I thought they were awesome. Like honestly, I just thought they were fun, like cool cards. And I don't have any intentions of doing anything with them. I just want to own them and like look at them and enjoy them. So I think a lot of people start out really simple and then get a little bit more into like a niche, or let's say like completing a specific thing, or get into higher dollar value stuff because then money becomes more of a thing. I think for me, I've kind of done that and then drifted back the other way. I've like kind of reversed it a little bit and gone more simple again. And I might be spending a bit more, but I'm definitely net negative on my PC stuff for sure. But it's a hobby, and I don't make money when I go fishing. I don't go make money when I go to the driving range and hit some balls. Like I'm not expecting to make money in this hobby with my PC stuff anyway. Some aspects of it, I'm literally running as a business. But in terms of like what I collect and enjoy when we're focusing on that conversation, the money is like secondary to me now. It's not a big part of it. And I don't go crazy. I don't buy big expensive things that I can't afford and I don't have the money for too. So like I feel confident in what I'm buying. I don't feel bad. I don't have a dread or like a buyer's remorse type feeling because I know I can afford that $10 thing. Like, you know, it's not something I need to stress about. I don't push myself. And that self-control, I think some people have struggled with it. I think we've seen a lot of people struggle with it the past couple of years, is the self-control of the spending and ripping packs to chase moonbeyonds and, you know, just some of the simple stuff like that. It's so easy to get carried away. And I've done it. I've opened a bunch of ETBs and I've opened a bunch of random stuff and crazy things and net negative, but I've enjoyed it all. So like there's not really much that I've felt bad about. I can't think of anything I've felt bad about opening after. Honestly, just trying to enjoy it. I've got a very like simple approach to things, more of a I don't know what the phrase you'd call it, like a naive approach, I guess. I don't know, young, elementary. And that's what's inspiring about you two for me, because you guys do play with big boy toys. Like you guys have got some stuff that's like pretty sexy, and that's why I love being in those you know, those conversations and listening to people talking Discord and watching you guys' videos and seeing mail days and those kind of things. So it's like I'm living vicariously through it. Like I'm getting to experience these big, like amazing cards and artworks and experiences that I don't need to do. I'm getting the satisfaction from you guys. Like I genuinely, I'm satisfied from seeing other people go through that, and I don't need to do it myself. So I think I'm probably lucky with that. You know, that I don't have the desire to go too far with it, and I can pull that fun from it. But
yeah.
What about you, Josh?
Money. I just want the money, baby. No. I gotta ask you one question though, because when you were talking about this, it reminded me of a card. I think you had bought like a rookie patch auto Tiger King card from PWCC.
Oh, so my God,
which pillar kind of drove you to that purchase?
That was my
Money.
it caught my eye for sure. I blew like, I don't know, I felt like it was like $100, but it was a 1 of 1. It was the only masterpiece card that Leaf had made of Tiger King, and it was in their own like Leaf slab, and I was like, that's just so cool. Like that, like no one. I can say that I owned a 1 of 1 Tiger King card that, like, I don't know, it's just fascinating to me. And I ended up selling it. Like I think I made like $10 profit or something. I didn't make anything crazy on it, but I wasn't in it to make money. I wanted to own it because I thought it was ridiculous. I mean, it was ridiculous, right? Like, it's crazy.
I agree. It was pretty ridiculous. I'm like, man, this guy's just throwing money at the wall. But
Curio, they call it Curio, right? When you buy like collectibles that are weird, like not that aren't like, they're like out of the standard of being a normal collectible type thing. I think they call it Curio. I think that's the phrase.
I've bought some of those Leaf autos, over the last, year and a half or so. They're funny.
Yeah.
They're just like cheap, kind of funny, autos of a lot of different funny, people, including Joe Exotic.
Oh yeah. But so for me, it's not so much the art chasing it. It's basically, again, when I got back in 2020, I went on Facebook Marketplace, saw something posted for like $2,000. I bought it. I told my wife, I was like, hey, I was married at the time. I'm like, hey, I'm about to spend $2,000 on this thing. My house, just for example, my mortgage at the time was like $50,000. So the house I was living in was $50,000. So I'm about to spend $2,000 on a binder of Pokemon cards, which is what, like a 1% or 2% of my freaking house or whatever it is. So it's pretty crazy that I was dropping that kind of money at that time. But I bought it, flipped it in a week, made $4,000. And basically from there, where I like doubled my money initially, my wife kind of gave me a pass, and then developed into a business kind of with a business credit card. But I work full time, still 9 to 5. But shout out to the PK Raiders. But
hey,
yeah, but
so glad they came in while you were talking, and I just got out of my monologue.
But so it's really like the money helps drive me into collecting. Like Yu-Gi-Oh for me is huge collecting. I have way more of a collection base into some of the Yu-Gi-Oh stuff. But I have a nice little collection of Pokemon, but basically it all is driven off of selling things. So I'm selling frequently through eBay primarily. Not so much raw cards. Probably the first 9 months was selling a bunch of raw cards, but I'm driven by, I like conditional rarity. I've always been one of those guys. So shout out to Low Pop, and I've always had a big respect for that guy. I've talked to him quite a bit, but he's, again, a conditional rarity guy. A lot of people hate it. I'm a fan. Obviously it's a thing. It's always a thing. PSA 10s are a version of conditional rarity. PSA 9s for really old stuff are conditional rarity. It's cool. I definitely get a kick out of ultra modern Japanese black labels. It's not my thing, but I like things that are old that have really high grades that there's not tons of, which is really cool. So I get a kick out of that. That's kind of one of my drives, is getting like some of that old stuff, not really to be like a flex or anything. Like I have a certain species I collect in Pokemon, which is Zapdos and Diglett, it is what it is. But I absolutely love collecting those different cards. And it's crazy. You wouldn't believe there's like a $2,000 Diglett card out there, but it is. But haven't gone up that mountain yet. So it's fun, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, my collecting journey has definitely shifted around a ton. Over the last kind of 4 years, and as I've been kind of, I view the last 4 years as I've really been heavier into it, I would say, and spent a lot more time. I think before that I was sort of mostly kind of a lurker, just kind of learning, really before I was maybe comfortable enough to sort of, this is what I like, or this is what I think's a good investment, or if I'm speculating or whatever, or this is what I think I'll, really the direction I want to take. And, for me to spend a lot of money or more and more money over time, I had to make more and more money over time to feel comfortable with that. And then also just have my knowledge, feel like I knew what was out there more and more, and the more and more comfortable I feel like what's out there, the better decisions I think I'll make, as a collector. I think when I started, Greeny was talking about he was watching like my first video on YouTube with Rafi. Back then that was not at the total beginning for sure, but at that point I was really like I was like a smaller Z and G in a lot of ways, like a smaller James, in that I was not at that point. It really wasn't a business, it was and Z really wasn't either. It was really like, I enjoy this stuff. It's fun. I'm kind of seeing how far I can go with it. And similar to him, it was like we started, I think he started with like $500. I started with something, similar, very low at that time. Let's see, when did I make a lot of my biggest, when did I really flood the market? I think it was like around actually the time I started making videos on YouTube. But if you go like even just a few months before that, everything that I had really had in my collection up to that point was all from flipping sort of lots, smaller lots, doing some grading, like starting to get comfortable with the process of like grading, selling some of those at premiums, starting to learn that stuff a little bit, and then put it back into cards that I liked better. I would keep 10s that I hid and sold 9s, that sort of thing, to kind of accumulate stuff. And then I became a lot more sort of like bullish. And I remember talking to my dad quite a bit because I was very nervous to do this. And I was like, I'm going to sell a bunch of my stock and put it into this market and, try, let's see what happens. I feel like these things are really underpriced and I'm just going to go for it. And at the very worst, I'm just going to own a ton, like, of a percentage of cards that I think are super cool and are super low pop, basically. And so in the beginning, it was very driven by, like, I just love this stuff. Like, I found my childhood Pokemon binder and I was like, I literally, like, I don't know if this is like too much information, but like I slept with that binder like by my bed when I found it for like 3-4 days as soon as I found it. I don't know if it was like a comfort thing or it was just something like to find this thing from my childhood. It was, and I think more than anything, it was like the Alakazam base card. I do not know why that hit so hard, but it was like, it was like this wonderful nostalgic like feeling of like being connected to my childhood. This was something that I didn't realize I still had. I thought was like gone or my mom had done something with it, found it at her house. Then I started looking at the market. I started watching YouTube videos, going down the rabbit hole, seeing that, wow, people had businesses doing this. People were flipping and reselling and speculating. And it's like, well, I love that stuff too. Let me start to, navigate and start to practice some of that and do some of that. And so I think that and then over time, when the hobby exploded, it was like, oh, this is life-changing money. Yep. I did not expect that at all. I expected that at the best possibility, which I thought was fairly realistic, was I was going to be able to sort of do what I did kind of steadily. The hobby would sort of, there'd be boom periods because hobbies tend not to like, just kind of, steadily kind of go up forever. But that, it would take 20, 30, 40 years from now, and it would be sort of a slow thing. And by then my wealth would also have grown. And so I would grow my wealth with the hobby, and sort of my stock portfolio would probably outgrow my Pokemon cards, and overall I'd be able to kind of actually keep them, and I wouldn't be forced to sell them because it's sort of like this life-changing crazy money. Then 2020 happens. I own 70% of cards that have gone from, 70% of the population of lots of cards that have gone from, $100 to $2,000, to $2,500. And it's like, wow, this is really life-changing money. I need to start to sell, think about it more as a market. That's when I started coming more onto YouTube, and also just being like, warning people, or just feeling like this is kind of crazy. Like I don't, I'm concerned about this, et cetera, et cetera. And then it really shifted for me from like, wow, I can just sort of enjoy this hobby and kind of grow with it, to like, I can't afford to keep these anymore I would never buy these at these prices. Yeah. It became a lot of that. feeling that way about a lot of cards. It was like, I loved these cards at these lower prices. And I thought that they were like like I was really happy to own them and grab them. And yes, there was a motivation of like, maybe they'll go up quite a bit, or it feels cheap relative to other hobbies. But a lot of it was just simple, like, dude, for $300, $400, $500, I can own like 30% of like the PSA 10 population of my favorite Skyridge Hollow. You know, it's like sick. You know, it's like, that just seems, that's fun. Like, I can certainly afford $250, $500, you know. Yeah, and so it's the hobby has exploded, you know, and the prices for these things have gone up a lot, and so it's become a lot more about the money, about the business. And you know, I was a social worker, and so I was making 70,000. You know, just to be totally blunt, it was like, I'm making $70,000 a year at this job that I'm working extremely hard at and killing myself at, and I'm making millions of dollars basically doing nothing, just kind of like getting lucky in Pokemon. And it's this sort of like crazy thing. And, you know, lots of people were sort of found themselves in the same boat, and we're sort of still in this kind of riding this wave, and in this interesting place where people are thinking of this stuff as investments now. You know, it's a lot of people really thinking of this stuff as investments, thinking of this stuff investment first, business first. You know, that pillar has really shifted, I think, for a lot of people. Whereas I think back then it was really very few people who would have said, my first pillar is business. You know, it was the most of people, particularly people who were not DA Card World or sort of a massive sort of, you know, or you know, LGS or something like that, you know, would have really leaned more on those. And I think that it's a bit sad for me, if I'm being completely honest. This is just me personally. I miss collectors. Like, I miss having more of that, even that just like vibe. Like, even when you talk about money, there's this like, well, I'm doing this because I want to own these things and I think they're worth it, and I'm excited to grow my collection, and I'm really excited to buy this card, and I don't have to like be afraid that it's going to like cause me to not be able to pay my credit card bill, or if I hold this collection, I'm not like mortgaging my family's future. Like, you know, like, and I think all that pressure on the hobby and pressure on people, you know, has been weird. It's very weird.
100%.
These are fun cards that have like cool pictures on them, and it's interesting to me how much it's gone away. You know, and you know, as collector, because, you know, and I know you guys love this stuff, you know, probably Greeny, you and I probably do fairly similar. Maybe would you describe us as basically doing the same thing in these hobbies? It's kind of like both definitely like collectors at heart, trying to build a collection we really love, but like, you know, looking for deals, seeing great opportunity to kind of, you know, make money, and we both have maybe fancy tastes or rare tastes, or we want to own, you know, some of the expensive, best of the best stuff, you know.
Exactly.
You know, and so maybe I'll direct it to you first. You know, how do you feel? Do you feel like, and I'll just add too that, you know, I think sometimes too, the money pillar can kind of make me enjoy the other pillars less, or like I lose a bit of the sort of like I almost just want to check myself, and I've really been trying to spend more time with like actually my cards and with collectors, rather than sort of like in investing conversations all of the time, to try to almost get back a little bit more of that sort of like appreciation, you know, for the art,
more fun,
for what it means to me, you know, or the completionist in me, where that's really what drove me to be here in the first place. You know, the life-changing money is like, you know, hey man, it's hard to pass up life-changing money in freaking Pokemon cards because it's fun. You know, I think it's human nature that tons of people rushed in here and tons of people are trying to create businesses and make a lot of money off this. Like it's completely understandable, right? It makes perfect sense. Oh, I can make life-changing money off of Pokemon cards? Like, sign me up, right? Anyway, Greeny, what do you make of a lot of those things?
Yeah, so for me, like, I guess my take on it is like, kind of like, how am I still finding fun in the hobby? How am I not just like diluting it and just like turning it into a business? I do completely agree with you in that aspect. Like, when I'm spending way too much time just listing a bunch of auctions and buying now, it's like, Jesus Christ, like it's too much. Like, I don't want to do it because I do work 9 to 5. I have 2 kids. I got a wife. I have way too much going on. I'm going to school right now. I got Professor Oak I got to talk to every damn week, which is Jesus Christ. But and then I jump on these, which is awesome. But I this is the type of stuff, talking to collectors, talking to Professor Oak. I love auctions. I love just back in the day when I first got in, PokeRev did PWCC live streams. A lot of people might not remember that. A lot of people might. That was huge for me. I love just it was once a month. He would do a PWCC live stream. I would just love watching to see what's happening in the market and just looking at all these deals and PWCC on because it was on eBay. You could get steals and pickups and all these because it was like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And it was everything. So watching those type of auctions is really fun. So that's why I do some streaming of PWCC now. It's not on eBay, so it's not as awesome. The formatting is completely different. But man, I'll go through 100 pages almost every week and looking at all the different things, all the Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I look at the video game page. I look at all these different things, trying to find cool value. Like, oh man, this thing's way underpriced. I don't just stop at the WotC area. I go past those. I go into the EX area, the Nintendo area, the black and white. Those usually are much thinner. It's pretty much like 70% WotC, 30% ultra modern. It's pretty light in between, but I have a hell of a time. Like just even keyword searching, like 10 different things in there. I have a blast. Just looking at all these different things. Every week inside of PWCC, I find different cards. I'm like, what the hell is this? I've never even seen this before, and it's really cool in order to still have that because I was not in it really before 2020. So I see stuff that came out in like 2017. I'm like, that's a badass looking Zapdos. Why have I never seen it? Oh, it's only 6 years old. Holy cow! Like, so I'm fortunate in that where I have not been in it this whole time. So there's so many errors I'm still experiencing. But yeah, the money thing, it muddies it so much, and it has to happen. Otherwise, like you get down and you can get down into a deep hole. So I have to leverage some of it because I have kind of expensive taste. Like I like conditional rarity. So I got to be moving stuff. When I grade a bunch of stuff and I get a bunch of 8s and some 9s, those things are getting sold rather quickly. But it's a bag. I had to pay a friend like $1 a listing to come over to my house and do it because I absolutely hate effing eBay. So it's what I got to do to kind of keep enjoying the hobby because I hate having to sell things. I don't hate selling things. I hate going through the process of listing stuff on eBay because it's not my job. I got way too much other stuff going on. So yeah, that's me. What about you? What keeps us going for you?
Yeah, what do you think, Oak?
I enjoy listing on eBay. I kind of like it's like almost escapism for me. I like turn off from the rest of the world and I can just take pictures and look at cards and photograph them and make them look nice and get all the little technical things right. It's like what the phrase is, cathartic or whatever. That phrase where it's like it's kind of, yeah, it's like completely takes me out of it. So it's interesting to say that it's so unenjoyable, but I completely get it because I'm imagining someone like you just touched on there, Jake, Z and J, James, him and his crew just listing a phenomenal amount of cards every single day. Like that is a whole different level. Like I know you guys were just talking about, chasing some of the bigger stuff. I mean, I only went a bit more serious with buying and selling in March this year. Up until then, I'd really been pretty much just buying and then selling and buying and selling when I saw like good opportunities, like really strong ones. But the past few months, I've actually got a bit more serious about it. Actually, buying and selling. I mean, I've only just hit 5 figures. Like I'm very, very small, low scale, like nothing crazy going on, but like. I feel pretty capped out with time. We just had our second baby at Christmas, and I have an incredibly demanding job, managing some teams at my work, and I feel capped out. But I like to think, like you were talking about, Jake, building that into something in the future, maybe broadening it out when time is not as much against me, and I can make the money flow a bit easier. I just made some notes as you guys were talking, so I didn't forget. I know you were also talking about lurking initially when you first started talking. You were talking about lurking and learning. I don't think we're ever going to stop doing that. I feel like that you talked about it as past tense, but I'm sure you're still doing that now. I know I am. I've been doing it for years now. Like, I feel like I'm always listening and absorbing and listening to these kind of lives and podcasts and people talking in the Discord and even conversations I'm not in. I've done so well in this hobby by just absorbing from people. I think that's so underrated and underestimated in terms of just the value that you get from that and that knowledge base. I've learned so much from the community, especially the people in Discord. Like, they've been, I mean, incredible. Yeah. The other thing I was going to touch on real quick was you were talking about you and your father buying some vintage stuff, some older antiques. In America, the big class is antiques, but like some older stuff. And I feel like at the time they were made, you didn't know they were collectible, right? They were like maybe sought after or desirable or fancy or something, but you probably wouldn't have classified it as like collectible. I feel like what's happening with Pokemon and a lot of the IPs that we see making comics and cards and those kind of things right now is they're kind of like making collectibles. Yeah. And it's like purposefully known and like we're all actively participating in it. We're like actually making that. And like, I don't think it's bad or good or anything. It's just different. And I don't know what that means in the future, because I know when things are very desirable in the past, a lot of the time they've ended up being collectible, things that have done really well. This has like been made into being something really good. What does that become? Does it become better? Does it become worse? Like, I've got some worries, I think, with that.
So collectible cards started as throw-ins in tobacco, like that. Mm-hmm. They were not really considered real history of this stuff. That's where the real history of, and then it turned out that it was so popular. They didn't know the companies who developed this thought it, like they were just like, all right, like we'll give it a try.
Fun.
It was so popular. There is something about having cards like these little things with faces and then trying to complete them all that just hits human psychology. And so what these companies found over time is the cards were the big seller that kids were desperately telling their parents to go buy, and then they realized, oh my gosh, let's actually make the cards the main thing. That and we'll add a little gum because let's be careful. We'd want a little treat in there, at least if you don't get cards. But it became the cards were the central focus of the pack, and the gum was sort of the secondary. And then no gum eventually, just cards, right? Cards can stand on their own. So sort of an interesting sort of evolution of these as collectibles from being sort of made as a kind of whatever to now. I think the idea. And we can get into serialized cards because I listened to your comments on that, and I do have some, I think, slightly different opinions on it, and maybe I don't feel quite the distinction that you guys feel between serialized cards and inserts, because to me they're just the same. It's just a more extreme version, with the number on it of how much is actually made versus such a sort of guessing. Mm-hmm. The reason the Moonbryon or any of these cards are valuable is because they're rare inserts and hard to pull, and the companies are intentionally making them hard to pull, right? Like they're intentionally creating those sort of inserts, and that's been going on, since the 90s, 80s and 90s. Now, before that, there weren't those, right? Before that, it was just looking like all the cards had the same rarity. If we want to look back to sort of vintage, right? Vintage sports sets, and so it's been interesting, right? It's this interesting, one of the golden rules, which really isn't actually a true rule, but it's a good place when you start, as you engage in things in life, it's always good to learn the rules. And then you realize that the rules can be broken and they don't apply to everything. But one of the sort of golden rules of collectible investing is that no collectible that was intended to be valuable and initially was valuable stays valuable or is a good investment. And it's really only the Action Comics. It's really only the things that were not seen as a collectible initially, but were widely loved. That isn't actually true, but there is an important point in there, which I think is part of what you guys are getting at. It's sort of maybe the worry about, are these serialized cards cool? Are they enjoyable to collect? Will they be for the long run? Are these inserts? I'm going to open it up because I think there's a false distinction actually between serialized and inserts. They're really just the same. Are certain items being rarer than others? Is that something that people are going to always want? Is that something that you guys want, right? Is that something that makes it fun? It's an interesting place to take this conversation. I do want to respond to a couple of things, if I can remember, Oak, that you touched upon. One clarification I wanted to make about the money side for me is that the selling is very enjoyable for me, and making money is enjoyable. So it's not so much that part; it's more that becomes everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not doing the other stuff anymore. I'm not collecting. I'm not building things. I'm actually tearing apart something I built, which is kind of sad. It's enjoyable. So like the selling or the list, it's not the actual process that's unpleasant. It's the sort of like, I really enjoy collecting. And now because things are too expensive for my liking or for my taste, or I don't believe in the prices, I don't see the value, I choose to no longer collect, which on the one hand is like a wah, and I'm with you, it's like, on the one hand, it's like, these are luxury children's cardboard. And I was never on the sort of like evil businesses, scalpers train, that can easily go into that. Like, you guys are ruining the hobby, right? You're ruining the hobby we love. It's a little bit more like when things get popular, like greed comes in, speculation comes in, it pushes up prices, and it pushes them up way larger than makes sense to the average collectors. And then collectors suffer from that. They can't collect the things that they enjoy. They leave the hobby, or they become businesses themselves. I think a lot of that has happened from my sort of market psychology. I think a lot of collectors have become more businesses. And that shows you that like we've sort of, the prices have gotten out of hand. We don't need to get into a market discussion, but maybe there was one other point I wanted to make. That's okay. So do you want to talk a little bit about the serialized or about specifics, inserts? Yeah. Do you like those? What do you make of them? I loved hearing your opinions. It's just nice. Like, part of why I love your podcast so much is like, I can just like hear people's honest opinions, and I may agree or disagree. And it's just like sweet to hear like another collector's opinion. And these are all, it's very subjective, right? It's like, I'm very interested in what people actually like, and people feel. So love to hear.
I think what's good about that, you're saying about listening to it and hearing other people talk about it, it's not always, I'm trying to think how to phrase this. Like, I think it's a positive thing. I want to make sure I word it the right way. So like, say I'm listening to you talk about serialized cards, and you say one-of-one serialized cards are crazy, but I think they're awesome. And it like can be good for me to like be reassured that like I'm not like just the only voice. I'm not the only person thinking this thing, or not thinking this thing, or whatever. It like makes you realize like you're part of something that's like a bigger discussion. It's not everybody just thinking and doing the same thing. I think that's a really positive thing. It's like reassuring to me that I'm not just part of some hype train or some hate train or whatever. Like, it's just, we all have our own thoughts and feelings about it. I think that's what I've really enjoyed talking with Josh about when we have disagreed on stuff, or I've questioned him or pushed him a little bit on things, and vice versa. Because I just think it's like, I think it's good to have each side. You need to be sellers. You're talking about people going into business, turning collections into business, that kind of stuff. You need buyers. But if everyone's doing the selling and the business side of stuff, like you always need the yin and the yang, right? You always need the other side of it. And I think even just in conversations, you need that for it to be an actual full conversation. If Josh and I just said, yep, that's good. Yep, that's good. Like every episode, like that'd be boring as hell. Like I don't think we wouldn't have done 25 episodes. I don't think we would have lasted 2 or 3. So the fact that we can actually, have a full like sides and agree. Like I agree with him on a lot of stuff, honestly, but I still want to talk it through. Like we still have different, even like views on the things we're talking about. Even if we agree, like we still see different data points, or we see different like positives or negatives in there, and that's really enjoyable for me. I think what's really interesting, kind of what I've heard like a few people talk about, like people being really obsessed with the money aspect of Pokemon lately. That's been like the talk of the town in a lot of different areas. And Josh and I saw that. I don't know if we actually really talked about it yet, Josh, but we had a young girl come up to the table to do one of those trade-up challenges.
Yeah.
They're not doing trade-up challenges to trade up to the best favorite artwork. Like it was about money. Like they weren't trading up to like trade up the evolution of the card or trade up to like the timeline of an older card to a newer card or vice versa. Like it wasn't like a challenge or something they're trying to make happen. They were trying to make money, like trying to get a more expensive card. And the girl was like, what, 8? I don't even, I'm terrible at guessing.
Yeah, probably not even, probably like 6, 5.
Very young. And she was spending a day like trying to make money with something like, I don't know. It was odd. Like, I'm sure you guys understand what I'm saying though. Yeah. Even kids now, like the very young kids that you would think of the target audience to be collecting and playing this game, it was about getting a more expensive, more valuable card. And I think, I mean, you kind of said, Josh, like, the family was there. It felt like maybe she was being like a bit of incitement there almost from the family trying to get things. I don't know. I don't want to assume. I threw money at her. I threw her like a nice slab. And I think the one I traded in, I think I got her to sign it. I think I actually have it signed. And she was like, what? Like, write my name. She'd never done a signature before because she was so young. She didn't even understand what I was saying. I was like, yeah, just write your name on it. Like, it's a memory of my first trade-up challenge, like receiving one kind of thing. And I mean, I just tried to make it like a fun experience for her and for her to not focus on the cash part of it, I think is what I was trying to do. Because it was fun for me. I didn't care about the money. It was $20 slab or whatever.
Yeah. I think for me, the money is fun until I don't even want the cards anymore because they're too expensive. So like
a guilt almost.
Well, it's like I can't actually buy any of these cards to put in my collection, like basically any of them, because I think all the price is way too much for me as a collector. Yeah. But again, these things are like when we move this to sort of a market discussion, it becomes, well, what I would pay for something is not necessarily what other people would pay. For two reasons. Other people might like it more, and so they're willing to pay more. Or the other more subtle reason is that they may just have more money. They may like it the same as me, but that $1,000 is much less of an impact on their life than the $1,000 for me, right? But where I come from is like, hobby's like super young. It's filled with mostly people who are not, super wealthy, right? Compared to other things. So I think that's where I get. And it's just, I interact with people so much and with the hobby so much, and it has shifted. I'm having different but again, this has been a 4-year. Like, I don't think this is just like in the last few months. Like people, like it's been something that's sort of been going on, I think, a lot. And it's unfortunate because I actually think that there was a period where we were like getting back to sort of like there was almost like maybe some collecting happening again. And now we're in kind of another, it's like where it was like, oh, like there were definitely a large group of people who were just like, oh, I can't make money off of this, or it's going down. I'm just like not interested in it anymore, which is like totally fine, right? Like that's healthy. And so there's two different things. One is sort of like, I just think that this is natural cycles in markets. So like, I expect this will happen in any like successful market. You're going to like see these periods and these cycles, but just for me personally, this is less enjoyable. From a collector perspective, making the money and the business perspective is quite enjoyable, even if it's a bit stressful. So it's not like I completely, I'm not appreciative of what's going on and like what I've been able, to do and what people are willing to pay for items that I have. Like people are just willing to pay way more for the items that I have than I think they're worth. And I feel they're worth as a collector. And that's, listen, it's, I can then take that money and do other things, but it's part of why I've gotten so into other hobbies, because in other hobbies, other cards and other things, there's lots of stuff that I do find value in as a collector that I think are really cool and seem undervalued, and affordable. And, so that's part of the interesting part of the journey is that money is always a factor in everything because our money is limited. So when you're a true collector, you only have so much money and you have to figure out, where I'm going to allocate that. Right. And so when things become expensive, you move to something else naturally. And that's been a big part of my journey is like, there might even be things that are not they're like some of these cards I'm buying right now for $5, $10, $25. I wouldn't say that I want them as much as cards that are going for thousands of dollars, but they're $25 versus $1,000.
Way cheaper.
Yeah, and for the price, it's a way better thing, and that's where the money comes in. But everyone collects differently, and everyone obviously has different finances, and Greenie, I'll put it to you.
So, are we still talking about serialized cards? Because
anywhere you want to take it, we can let's go into serialized cards because I liked hearing your guys' opinions on it. It was enjoyable.
Yeah, so and just like the inserts for serialized cards I thought was interesting because like it's just the big difference for me is it's not marketable as good. Like Umbreon, VMAX, Ultra Rare, it's not as spicy as 1/1 ring. Like it just good night, lights out, no competition. You're not going to market that to the masses. Even though 300 is 600, so they're almost doing themselves a disservice if they only did print 2,000 of them. If you slap the number on that son of a gun, the thing is going to do 10x better than if you didn't put a number on it, just because, now it's tangible. People can feel it. It's actually something instead of just being part of the sea of cards, essentially. Like when you hone in and actually give something like something that has a quantity, now people can just more relatable instead of just like everyone thinks there's almost like an infinite amount. Like if you were to look at like a graded population of probably the Umbreon, I don't even know what it's at. It's probably above 2,000. So who knows how many exist? Like who knows? Like maybe it was just 3,000 made. So I feel like it could, they would do themselves a huge service if they did it. Might as well. But I know a lot of people don't want to see it because they know exactly what it would do. It would just drive marketing bonkers. And that's what all they're doing in Magic the Gathering, which it's genius. It's doing great. Obviously, the set is the best set printed from Magic the Gathering, and God knows I don't even know because I haven't watched any of that market until this minute, really. So they're doing the right things. The marketing is insane because of people care. It's a 101. Yep. Oh, I have one in the world, and but it's crazy. Like when you look at sports cards, I was talking, I think in this last podcast about Calvin Johnson and stuff. You can get like 1 of 20s and 1 of 30s for like $15. No, everyone in sports, they don't give an F because there's just so many serial. It's just saturated at that point. So right now it's a hot new thing. It's awesome in the sense, but if they keep doing it, it'll just turn into sports. That'll be the next thing. And it also, I feel like Magic never really got to experience like the ultra modern chase. Like that is, I think, new for a lot of people. I feel like Rudy's still learning like all of this. He's like, wow, this new thing, because why is this more expensive than my beta cards? Like, what's going on? Like, why are those going down in price? I have no clue what's going on. And it's crazy because that's exactly, we're going through it in Pokemon. We know like ultra modern is absolutely insane. Obviously the demand is crazy. Just because it's being marketed. Base set unlimited, it's not being marketed right now. It's not on TikTok. It's not being ripped in all these ripping ships. Like it's all about marketing. Like you learn stuff on the news because it's being marketed. Just like, for example, like we just had 2 crazy accidents in the ocean. Like 700 people died in a ship. Nobody really heard about it. And like 5 people died in a ship. We knew their names, so it blew up. Like it was more relatable. People knew who they were, where they were from. So people cared more, which makes no sense. Like it's just all social media marketing. It's insane.
Yeah. So I guess let me ask you directly, what do you think as a collector, Greenie? What do you think about those rings? Trying to put aside the marketing or what, I mean, obviously we're being marketed too, so it's affecting the way we feel about it too. It's, it's all part of it, but like, do you like them? Do you, are they exciting to you? How much would you pay for one? I'm curious. Like instinctively.
So, Yep. So I would, yeah, if I got a numerical card, I think there's what, one of 900, of 300,
Mhm.
101, maybe a 600 in there.
Yeah.
It would be cool to have one of them. I don't think I have a preference if it's the Elven Ring or the whatever. I don't even know the differences. I watched the movies, but I never read the books or know too much about them. But
Yeah.
when I saw those come out, my first instinct was to go look at the Lord of the Rings TCG that came out in like 2005. So I looked at that TCG, and to look at the ring cards, there's some beautiful full art ring cards that came out 20 years ago, people. And then
you can get the One
go,
Ring from Middle Earth, which is my favorite. I'm a Middle Earth fan myself, so it never gets
so
old.
then I went back to the 1995 set, and then I bought one of those rings, and I was like, I'll spend $100 on a ring from 1995. Sure, it's called the One Ring. Sure, makes sense.
And
So
that's a rare, and that card is pretty expensive, particularly unlimited, and has always been. And it was also very playable. So like, yeah, there's like a history to that card within the Middle Earth TCG. Yeah.
So that was the way my mind worked. Instead of me dropping, I don't even know what the cheapest ring is right now. There's probably an unserialized one that's probably pretty cheap, but
I think they're
for
like
me, it made
$30. Like the completely unserialized ones are like around. Maybe they've gone up a little, like 30 to 50, maybe.
yeah, they're cool, but I feel like the arts aren't cool enough for me to want to buy and grade and stuff like that. Like it was cooler for me to go to the set from 1995 and buy that one ring, the limited one with the black borders. And it was really cool because I have it here. It's going to get graded in probably the CGC slab with a black label. It's going to be badass. So for me, that's cool. I'm not into the new ultra modern stuff. I'm not into most of the ultra modern Pokemon. But there are cards that come out in ultra modern that I'm huge fans of. Like I have collected a handful, but it's generally it's either a Zapdos or a fancy art that, like, even the Amazing Rares I like because it gives me vintage vibes because it's a half art card. And but yeah, if not a huge fan of the modern ring. So how about you, Oak?
So how much? Did you say how much? I thought I might have missed it. How much would you pay
What?
for those rings? I'm curious.
A serialized one?
Yeah, let's take the 9 out of 900. What are you paying?
Yeah, because I was able to get the one from 1995 for $100, I'd have a hell of a hard time spending more than that.
More than 100. Yeah, no, I really just want to hear your opinion. Yeah, I'm just like super interested in what people have to say.
Yeah, I'm sure the bottom right now is probably hundreds, maybe, I don't even know, probably thousands, just because of how the marketing's doing on it. It's booming, which is insane. But
yeah, I think they're like definitely 1,000 plus for sure. I know one sold
crazy. One
sold for like 12 to 13,000, but it was the number one.
It was the number one of
whatever. I think it was the 300 one. Maybe. But obviously that's like, who knows how much more someone's going to want that one. That one's the alpha, and then you get into like how much value does that bring, So Oak, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, as well, and sort of as a collector. I don't know where you're at with this excitement.
It's very fast.
And may I add, just like serialized in general, because I know that like you're a big Lord of the Rings lover. Like I think all three of us really like Lord of the Rings, and so we might be a little more enjoy that than something else, But like I'm also just interested in your like, do serialized cards from like franchises that like, does that appeal to you as a collector, or does it kind of whatever?
Yeah, I think something I've been buying lately is I've bought a few one-of-one sketch cards, like Marvel cards and some stuff that's like kind of serialized. It is, but it isn't. Like some of them say one-of-one on the back, the sketches have got signatures, that kind of stuff. That's a pretty new development for me. Like I was never really before interested in that. I was so focused on Pokemon side of stuff, which this doesn't exist. I mean, there's nothing even close to what we're talking about. The actual like specific to the Lord of the Rings set that's coming out with Magic, I think it's really interesting. I'm really like fascinated and intrigued by it, and I think it's captured a lot of people's intrigue and interest from it being not just Magic and not just Lord of the Rings, but there being numbered cards and incredible artworks and monetary value associated with it, that kind of stuff. I don't know. I just think there's like so many like bells being rang like in so many different areas with this set that it seems like there's just a lot of noise and sound about it. But when you actually look, I've seen a couple of glimpses. I've been really trying to avoid the artwork and not investigated, but I've seen a couple of glimpses of people that have thrown pictures in Discord, and it looks pretty cool. I mean, it looks like a pretty cool set. So regardless of Serialized, like, I want to buy it. I think the Serialized part for me is a cherry on top. But it was funny when, you know, Josh just quoted 100. That when you first said it, in my head, I said $100 would probably be like, I'd be okay spending $100. It's not like, I don't know if I have a hard cap. Like, if it was something that I really, really obsessed over, and it was like the last one, if I was collecting the whole set, like I'd probably go more. But like I'd be happy to buy one of those Serialized ones for $100. I'd feel good about it. I wouldn't feel bad. I feel good. $200. I mean, maybe like I'm you know, 1,000. Who knows? I honestly, I don't know. I think it's I got to see it, and I got to play around with it, have a bit more contact with it. Some of the stuff I've been buying that's, you know, 1 of 1 and sketches, 1 of 25s, all that kind of stuff. I've not been spending much on that stuff. Like I bought that Vader sketch 1 of 1 thing recently, and I think it was like $50 or $60. Like, and that's like one of the more expensive ones that I've ever bought. So I'm not spending crazy money on it. I just love the art. I think they're interesting. I think they're fun. It's more of just a little, I just think it's cool. It's the only one of it. You know, there's an intrigue about it. Something that I did find super interesting today, Marvel Collectors podcast. It's like MCC podcast or something. I shout him out. He's an English guy. Talks about Marvel cards. I'm sure you've heard of him, Jake. I listened. Yeah, he hasn't released one in a little while, but I just listened to his today, and he was saying that he was back in 2008 or whatever. He was buying the 2007 box of Marvel, like a specific one, and the box was serialized, which like blew my mind. I had no idea that there'd ever been serialized boxes of stuff before, because I was just imagining, like, I got kind of like goosebumps, like imagining that happening today with like Pokemon card or like, I don't know, some other thing. And we actually literally knew the exact print numbers. People would lose it. That'd be crazy. And he was talking about walking down to the store and just buying a few packs out of the box that the store had just there. And like no manipulation, no like craziness or hype or anything. And like Marvel's been a pretty big collecting piece for many years now. And it just, that blew my mind. It's been on my mind all day since listening to that. It was, Dan's in the chat right now. I can see him, and Melfi. A couple of the guys that know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, nuts. That to me is nuts. I can't imagine that happening. If this was happening with the ring boxes on top of the ring cards, I mean, that would just be insane to know the exact amount of boxes and
yeah,
the control that could come of that from people with money would be next level. I mean that's like kind of scary but fascinating at the same time. It's kind of exciting.
Yeah, I think serialized cards. How's my audio and camera stuff? Am I doing
fantastic?
Cool. It's good. Yeah.
You were breaking up a little bit for me, Oak. I wasn't sure if it was on my end. I got everything that you said, but was he breaking up for you, Greeny, or
no? For me, it was good. Solid.
I think it's on my end. My internet's a little fuzzy. Let me know if
you look good.
I think that I both think that. So one interesting thing is like, well, have they done serialized yet? What's going on, you know, versus when we talk about sports, when we talk about Marvel, we talk about Stars, we talk about Disney, it's done some, you know,
yep.
Right? Like, is that people who are just TCG collectors who are going to be uninterested in those types of things, or they're just love TCGs? This is, you know, the first or some of the first. I forget, did Weiss actually come out with serialized ones or not? There was like, I forget.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I feel like they did, or there was talk that they were. I'm not sure if I'm not super deep into Weiss these days. There was talk. I'm not sure if they're the first ever serialized cards in TCG, but they're certainly among a small group of them.
They have different levels of the rarities, right? There's like rare, double rare, triple
Yeah.
rare, super duper rare, god
Well, I
rare.
heard
Like,
a rumor that may never have come true, Oak, that that they were actually some of the most rare ones were going to be numbered in a couple of sets. There was a rumor, but it actually may never have. I never actually saw them, so it may never have come to fruition. It might have just been a rumor at one point. Yeah, so like the gold autographed ones or something. I think the rumor was that they were unable to get autographs or something of the voice actors, and so instead they were going to serialized. I don't know, something like that. It was a while ago. If there are any Weiss, fans, I know we have some people who are very deep and pretty knowledgeable about Weiss. I'm sure they'd be able to answer that quickly in the chat for us if you're here. Please, correct the record. But I think so. I do think that that's cool. I think that I love the concept. I love that they did it with Lord of the Rings, and I love that they did it with Rings.
Yeah.
It's all about like greed and trying to, and like there's only a certain number of them, and that there were 9 human ones, and now there are 900 of those in the world. There's only one. Like it ties so well into the actual property and the actual cards. And so when I think about serialized stuff, right, I think serialized adds a lot of value, like as a collector for me. I think it adds chase. You know exactly how much there are. It creates a uniformity. Well, I'm going to collect, like in the Star Wars set that I showed on my Instagram, I'm going to collect all of the out of 10s, right? One from each set. And that's cool. Like for me, like I just enjoy it as a collector. Like, and there are a number of collectors who just appreciate that and enjoy it, right? Now, what can happen, I think, is that it can become like such a, like, what if I have a hideous one of one that like is that is terrible looking of a character that nobody cares about from a set that nobody cares about? Like, well, it's a one of
I've
one,
got one.
right?
Got one.
So I think it's like, well, the one of one in and of itself is kind of cool and has some value and enjoyment, but it's going to have way less value overall and enjoyment because it doesn't do well in those other areas. The card isn't good. I don't like the look of it that much. I don't like the character that much. Or the set, this is the 50th time this character has gotten this one of one, or this sports, athlete has gotten this one of one. I just don't care at this point, And I think that sometimes when I hear people like takes on these things, I think there's a take on we don't want one of ones in serialized in Pokemon because we don't want to make it any more expensive than it already is.
Exactly.
Trust me, as a collector, I like very much get that. Like I'm very sympathetic to that sort of take. I think the take of like it sucks or like I don't get why anyone would want those things is a very strange take in general.
Yeah.
Like I don't like it. There are probably plenty of people who are just are like, I just am like so art. I don't care about the rarity. I don't care. But then you also shouldn't be caring about inserts. You shouldn't care about the difficulty to pull because really they're just the same thing. This is just sort of an extreme version, and a version where you actually know how much of the, that there are. But if you enjoy pulling the harder one to pull, which is like, I mean, the majority of people, when they open packs, they just go straight to the most expensive or the one they want to hit. They're not looking at the commons and commons. So I kind of don't buy a lot of the BS, as I would call it, takes on some of these things. And I would add, though, I think that there are a lot of people from these spaces who are also unexperienced and have never collected serialized stuff before. And so they just don't know how it would feel to collect. The best way to know how it would feel is like try collecting some and see if you enjoy it or not. That's the best way to collect in general. All three of us can attest. Like, I mean, I bought things that I thought I would like and thought were cool, and then I just didn't like that much, and I sold it. Like, that happens. I think when you get too caught up in the hype or the making money, that's when you make poor collector decisions because you lose sight of like, do I like this? Do I think it's cool? Is this enjoyable? Like, is this fun for me? And I think if it is, like, ignore the sort of haters, and the sort of, lots of people have agendas, they're trying to push their own cards up. There's a lot of anti-other card sentiment because they own only Pokemon cards and they want people to just continue to collect and buy Pokemon cards and they want that market to do well. They don't want the competition of these other things, whether they're going to be honest about it, overtly or not, or whether they're aware of it overtly or not, So I think also it's like, when I see people get like really like, oh my God, there's only one of that in the world, like that must be worth $5,000, $10,000. I also think that comes from the inexperience of sort of not being in the sports card market where there have been serialized for, and you made such a great point, Creanie. It's like, you can become sort of desensitized to it. Like there's sort of a middle ground, I think. And this is, I think, true with any collecting. The more experience you have collecting and engaging in these, I think the better you'll be able to sort of like assess value for yourself, and you'll be less swayed by other people's opinions, and you'll be more sort of like, oh, this is a cool new thing. And how does it stack up against the 10,000 other cool things I've seen, 100,000 other cool things I've, seen, and where do I value that sort of thing? That's what that process has been like for me. I get some value from the serialized, but it's also very important to me, the character and the art and the look of it and the the story. Is this an early serialized one? Is this one of the first sets? Do I have a specific affinity to the sets? And then the serialized just sort of adds value from there for me personally as a collector.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the serialized is huge for like sets that are even smaller. Like I think in like MetaZoo tops, like that, like without serialization in that thing, good night. I feel like there's almost like that thing is gonna struggle. So there's got to be some type of printed scarcity in certain stuff like that. So that has it, and there's other things similar to it that have like the printed scarcity, just so there is the chase. And it's Pokemon, like you said, we don't need it. it's doing well.
And I would say one thing I do sort of agree kind of with your general takes or your feelings when I was watching your podcast about it is that there is a sort of like feeling when there's like a crap, lazy collectible created and then just a serialized number put on it. And it's like, well, I'm supposed to pay a ton of money for this just because it's serialized, but the release didn't make much sense. And that's a genuine complaint I have about a lot of Star Wars cards, frankly. I don't think a lot of these cards are that great looking. I think there's a laziness. I think that there are things that they could do better. And they sort of at times just like plop one of ones on these like not very well designed like autographs that are not even like signed by the person, and people are paying like $10,000 because it's a one of one, right? So like, there's sort of like that does bother me. Like that, like as a collector, it's almost like rather than the companies like go ahead and use these things because I think they're cool and enjoyable, but don't replace the quality of sort of like the look and the art and the autographers and the in-person signature. You know what I mean? Like don't put all the value just in that serialized. That doesn't sit well with me as a collector. And I think over time, the good news about the free market is like the free market will decide these things over a long period of time. And I think that if you don't do a good job with this, other companies will come in and create better products over time and take market share. I'm a believer in us collectors. Like us collectors really drive these markets at the end of the day in the long run. What we actually like, what we actually enjoy.
Yeah.
I think there's a subconscious version of serialized cards too. Maybe not as extreme as one of one, but I think about things like special delivery Bidoof and Charizard that like feel unattainable for a lot of people. And like, I'm not going to be able to just buy a pack and get that card, that kind of thing. I think a lot of people, I guess it's almost like a FOMO, like a deeper version of a FOMO, but people think serialized cards like difficult, hard to get, hard to pull, hard to break, that kind of stuff. And I think there's definitely some promos and things that have been created that have that similar kind of gist, even though they don't have a number on them. I mean, I made money from them. I definitely made money there, but doing that play, I wasn't interested in really collecting and owning that stuff. I thought they were cool, but it's not for me. You were talking about Star Wars. I think it's an out of 25 or something, Aqua C-3PO, and it's like just like a picture of him from like the movie. It's just like literally just standing there, and then it's serialized, and it's like I feel like I should be excited about this card. I feel like this is like the pull of the box, but like it was like kind of boring. Like it's like not that fantastic. So when you said that, like that hit home for sure. I've definitely felt that. And I think that's part of why the ring one is so deadly, like, and why the price is, because like it's a pretty cool card, and it's got like a cool connection, and it's got the marketing the hell out of it, and it's the one of one. I don't know. It's funny too. You're also talking about it, relating to the actual show and the books and stuff, the movie and the books, and the nine rings and the 900 and the one ring. Imagining all the different collectors that want it, being like all the different people in the book, like Frodo trying to like be the collector and make sure none of the bad guys get it, and try and hold it and make it not about money. And then the people chasing it because they want to get the money, and then people chasing it because they want to do this or that, whatever intentions there is for it. I think a lot of people are looking at that card in different ways, but I think most people, just like the ring, have ill intentions. I think it's about money and like getting something from it. And it was like kind of funny when I was thinking about that earlier today, that specific ring and just the approach. But yeah, I mean, it would be cool to pull it, right? Like for anyone,
it'd be cool to go to a tournament and play with that card and not and then see what it is. Everyone's gonna think it's like a fake or a proxy. Nope.
Higher security. Yeah.
Bridge shuffle it. Yeah.
So I do want to wind down at some point. Because I don't want to take up too much of your guys' times, and also I don't want to stay up too late myself tonight. Any more comments? I would like to do, if you guys are up for it, maybe we could do, 30 minutes of sort of like a Q&A from people just who are like hanging out with us. If anyone does have questions, people don't, we can just sort of end early. Or if you guys have questions for each other, for me, if there's any like topics or things you did want to touch on, we can like start with that now. And then just kind of like wind down. Would love to have you guys like on again, obviously, hopefully in the not too distant future to like hang out more.
I want to do both.
Drop the comments. I'm gonna real quick. I want to do the spicy. I want to go through a spicy comment with you, Jake. I want you to give your spicy answer to one of the spicy comments we got on one of our podcasts. So
okay,
if you're down for it.
Sure.
So on our last, so just those of you that don't know, every week we'll ask people to post like some spicy different thing. It doesn't even have to be moral at all. So it just like whatever, just send us something and we'll kind of talk about it or spin into a question. But somebody who's not going to win, shout out to Professor Birch. He said PSA is going to do something big really soon. CGC is stealing too much spotlight time with this new change. They'll remind CGC in some way or the other way that they're still the top grading company.
So sorry, just so I like PSA is going to do some big thing in response to CGC doing what they did. Is that basically the question?
That was what Professor Birch had said. Do you think that's a possibility or?
I don't think PSA is going to do anything. I think they're just going to eventually get their price down to like 12 with probably $10 specials once in a while. Like, I think that's their goal. I think their business model's like killing it. And that would be my take. Like, I'd be surprised. Like, Nat Turner's like a super, like, I've watched a lot of interviews of Nat Turner, and like my impression of him is he's just like pretty chill, just like thoughtful, like collector, passionate about the hobby. He has like a definitely good sense of like economics and like how to run a business. And I just think like, as long as like collectors and people like it, I think the main focus for PSA is just getting the time down, getting your cards back quicker, and lowering their prices. I don't think they are going to change anything else or would have any reason to. I don't even think there are like any other major complaints that people have. I mean, there are people who really don't like their cases. There are people who, obviously there's always complaints about the quality of grading and it's not, too easy, too hard, or obviously the biggest just complaint is inconsistency, which is valid and fair for every company, but they're trying as hard as they can, I'm sure, to be accurate. Like, I'm not sure, like Nat's gonna have a meeting with them. Oh, we need to be more accurate. Like, that would be my probably boring take on it. Do you guys have a different take?
What about you, Oak?
Yeah, I can't see it. For me, I feel like they're in the best position they've ever been in existence. Like, I think they've got more customers than ever. I think they grade more. They're more open to what they're grading than ever before. I think people are collecting the cards more than ever before. I just think that there's so many positives going for PSA right now. I don't know if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing. Like, I don't know what else they could do that anyone would want. Like, I don't think there's anything really to fix.
Yeah.
I also think the CGC thing, even if CGC does really well with the changes, I think that's really like healthy. I think it's a really good thing. It would suck if there was a monopoly of, I don't know, like pasta makers in the US. If there was only one type of pasta you could ever buy and you didn't like it, that would suck. Like, you would never be able to eat pasta. It feels like the same thing. Like, it's good that there's a lot of companies that can appeal to like people and their desires. They're, we already know people love PSA slabs, people love CGC slabs, hate this, hate that. Like, there's like people have opinions on everything. I've heard every opinion this past year on everything possible. And so that's good, because then there's always somewhere for those people to go. Like, there's always somewhere. So I feel really optimistic about PSA right now, where CGC is going. I do actually feel pretty optimistic about some of the changes. I feel good about SGC. I feel good about BGS. I mean, some of them I have some concerns with, but like, I feel like everyone's doing something good. Like, there's something where each of the companies, there's an exact type of person, type of car, type of thing that you're doing to go to. I feel like I know exactly where I would send each thing if I was to do something with it for any kind of card or collectible, that kind of stuff. I like that feeling. I like that feeling a lot. I think that's a really good thing. What about you? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I think PSA's got CGCs right by the testicles right now. So CGC's obviously doing a bunch of big plays, obviously staying relevant with changes for sure, which is great. I like the changes to the grading scale, assuming they actually change their grading scale and they actually start grading 10s easier. That'll be good. Being able to collect 10 sets, because I'm a 10 guy, would be awesome. Again, that'd be cool. Mm-hmm. The PSA, though, I feel like they're going to have some the nationals next month. They're going to have something. They're going to have some special. It'll probably be below 15, I would assume, at least for half of the month, if not the whole month of July. That is not in at all retaliation to what CGC has done. Of course, the timeline's there. So it looks, CGC is probably going to do something too. They're going to be grading on site in Chicago. So I think PSA does. I'm not sure. I think this will be my first year ever going there. So I'll be curious to see what's going on. So I'll be there for 1 or 2 days, just walking around, checking things out. But PSA has got no reason to make any changes at all. I feel like they're doing everything right. I don't think they're stressed at all by losing some market share in marketing this past week. They're chilling. They're printing money right now, so it's absurd, the stuff going through them right now.
I'm just gonna grab some questions. We'll try to go through kind of rapid fire a few. People have them. This is a cool question. It's an interesting question, Mason. Pokenomics says Pokemon make FOMO worse, actually, by not giving production numbers, especially for promos and limited release items. So the idea behind this would be something like, if they actually said how many there were, maybe it would be a lot more than people would expect, and so that would actually lower the value rather than raise the value.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think I kind of agree with that. I think my perception is, like, if there was a one-of-one Pikachu that came out tomorrow, I'm not gonna, even though that would be like a bit of a grail probably for me. There's like, I'm not gonna FOMO over it because I know it's not realistic for me to get it. So like, how could I FOMO over it? It's just, I just know there's no chance I'd be the guy that ends up with that card unless I pulled it if it was in a pack. Which again, we're going into the Magic the Gathering thing, but yeah, I think there probably is a little bit of that. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I think even if they flip, like if they announced it, it would do the opposite. Like, I feel like it would scare people seeing numbers, so it would basically just do the exact opposite of that. It would reverse FOMO. People would not want to buy it. Oh, there's how many millions of boxes made? MetaZoo printed 20,000. You just made 10 million of these Evolving Skies boxes. that's not investable. So that would be, I don't know. People would have a number to kind of gauge, but it would be weird. I feel like I do agree totally with what Mason said, but I feel like it's the same for booster boxes, promos, and limited release items. I don't think those are any different outside of boxes, in my opinion, but maybe at different scales, just because maybe they are less like Pokemon Center ETBs and stuff like that. So those will boom up faster. But yeah.
Wait, I think I misunderstood. So you're saying that there would be less FOMO, right?
No, I think exactly what Mason said. Does Pokemon make FOMO worse by not giving production numbers? I think they do make it worse. But if they were to give production numbers, it would just do the complete opposite. People would not be FOMOing into it. They would do everything they could. Probably it'd be way less purchased, and it would be probably a bad experience.
Yeah. Yes.
So I think for me, the answer would be it actually just has to do with what people's expectations are. So let's take a specific card, right? Let's take a specific hot card right now. Let's take the Screams, okay, or the Poncho Pikachus, right, that have really skyrocketed in price. If the average person in the market, there's no way of knowing this, but let's say the average person in the market who's buying this stuff right now thinks there was 10,000 of each of those printed or made, and then it comes out that there were 1 million. Likely, that person would then value it lower, logically, rationally. Yep. People don't always behave rationally. Sorry, I have like a moth.
That's what you've been chasing a moth?
Keep that moth away from my car.
We'll sit here for 5 minutes and watch you chase that son of a bitch around if you want. Like, it'd be pretty entertaining.
Yeah. So it really, it has to, and this is always the truth about print runs. And this is why, like, I always like when people make takes of like, it's either this or it's that, it all has to do with perception. Like the market right now has a certain value based on our collective perception of it. So if we have a collective perception that there's this many printed, like right now, we think Skyrage is one of the lowest printed sets. If it came out that Skyrage is the most heavily printed set of all time, we'd be like, you're lying because we haven't seen that much of it, right? But like there'd be some sort of pushback, but it would be like, oh my God, right? Like we placed it, we were paying for it because it was lower printed. That's very true for all this Japanese stuff. And I think one thing, if they actually gave out exact print runs, the positive would be that we would know. And so people might feel more comfortable and might pay more because, well, at least we know how many, and that makes me so much more comfortable, but not if it was way more than they expected. I do think that like if the print runs were given out of like how much of if people knew exactly like the Poke Parks and the play promos and all of these things, and they knew that those were like 1/100th of amount of those compared to the Poncho Pikachus or compared to these other things, and like that was public information that everyone knew for sure, I'm not sure how that would impact the value. It really depends on people's current perception. Do people know that? Do people not know that? And then of course rarity is supply is only one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is how much do people demand, how much people like it, the demand side. And so there might be cards that, 100,000 is like nothing of, and that feels like, oh my God, that I thought there were millions of that, only 100,000. Oh my gosh. And then there might be other cards that really only have value because people think there are a few thousand of, and then they learn there's 10,000 and, et cetera, et cetera. So, but I like your thinking, Mason, because I think that it certainly could have that effect where it could scare people. Like, I think there's both a sort of I definitely see takes on the, Reddit Poke investing, that I read that all the time. It's one of my favorite go-to places to read, to see just like what people are thinking.
Oh boy.
But yeah. And, I read takes all the time of someone telling someone else, there's 1,000 of this card, and I think there's probably 30,000. So it's like all the time there are these sorts of things. So if it was known that there really were 30,000, and there's lots of people buying it thinking there are 1,000, it would probably collapse the price. Yeah. So anyway, let's see what else we got.
Pole Father had a pretty good question.
Yeah, feel free. Is it below that or above? I was just going
It was,
through.
yeah, it's one of the last 6 sent messages,
Okay. Pull
comments,
father.
messages.
I will grab that. Probably do this and then maybe like one more question, guys, if someone wants to ask.
Sounds good.
All right. Pull father. Do you guys think AI will be the future of grading, or will big companies steer away from it because it eliminates the game of cracking slabs and resubmitting slabs, thus decreasing the top line? I like the second part of that. It's an interesting sort of speculation.
Go ahead, Oak.
I think that a computer can't pick up everything on a card. I think just literally it can't, unless when we're talking about AI, we're talking about a 4D scan with every single possible angle of the card, which I don't know how it would be held to be able to do that, but you would need to see, like, is there bends and waves? Is there like bumps and stuff? Like, is there like physicality is different? Is it the same texture? Is it the right thickness? Like, there's so much that goes into the human element of grading that like I trust. I trust that those people know that stuff and it's going in the right hands. Yeah, they might get it wrong sometimes, but for the most part, like, that's what they do. I don't know if a computer right now has capabilities of doing that. Maybe it does, but I feel like that would be a very expensive investment for a card grading company to invest in for such a small part of the business. Like, in reality, the grading part is pretty small. It's not a huge investment that they put into that. So, yeah, no, not for me. Maybe the future, like way in the road, but not short term. I don't see it, and I think that's why we haven't heard a whole lot of buzz about Genuine and with PSA. I think that's partly that. I think they're using it for more simplistic reasons than card entry at the beginning. Checking QA type stuff, just double checking over things, logging things. More of like an administrative tool than grading, honestly.
Yep.
So my understanding of like the challenge of AI is that AI can easily check centering, things like that, right? Because
which isn't AI. That's another thing too.
Oh,
That's crazy.
AI, that's good. Thank you. Yeah, AI technically is artificial intelligence, where it's actually learning. Right, where we kind of use AI, and I do this myself incorrectly. It's a good point. Any sort of like computer grading is not necessarily artificial intelligence, right?
Right.
That's a good point. But where I was, so it can do that. I shouldn't have said AI. Computers can easily do that, sort of computerized grading. But the actual sort of like artificial intelligence or the learning or the piece where it's I don't even know if I'd call this artificial intelligence either, but the piece where like it's been explained to me that like they're going to have like what a 10 looks like, and then they're going to compare a specific card in their database, and then it's going to compare the surface and everything to that card a bunch of times, and then it's going to like, is it far enough? Is it close enough to it? Like, that's the idea. But can you do that in a way that like how difficult is it to weight sort of like scratches versus like, is it on the hollow? How does it look? Is it like in the back? Is it obvious? How deep are they versus like theoretically I'm sure you could get every scratch in there and you could see how deep they all were, and you could mathematically like be like, well, the average depth of this many scratches, and you could have some sort, right? But then there's sort of that like eye appeal part of like, does it how, like, well, maybe the scratches don't bother me that much on this one because of where the scratches are specifically. How can an AI, I guess it's like it has to learn sort of what human beings like, but then you're going to have to like thousands of surveys. Like, you would have to have like human beings. They'd have to have us all like do surveys about like, what do we think this card, or, I just don't, or people at the company, maybe they're working on that, but as a layman in these sorts of things, that's my sort of understanding of what that like process would be like, is there has to be like a standard, and some of it could be a lot more easily accomplished than other parts of it.
Yeah.
But to the second part of your question here, I think if AI was ever done in a way that was really good, it would totally take over grading. And in a way that we actually really liked as collectors. And the idea, I like your thinking here, so I just think it's like an interesting point that they'd steer away because it would eliminate the game, but like for them to achieve this, it would be such a competitive advantage, and every other place would probably do it, and people would only be grading and people may only be paying for these tens or for these types of things. And so it would potentially destroy the sort of cracking business. But I think that the greater business is not the people grading to places so that they can crack, but to actually be accurate, be consistent, be trusted, and then garner a premium on the secondary market, which is I think what this would achieve for a company that could like achieve it in a way that we all felt comfortable or agreed with it. Anyway.
Yep. Real quick on that before we go to the next one, I wanted to give my hot take, but similar, like I've used Chat GPT for my engineering course, and that son of a gun will get questions wrong all the time, so they're pretty dumb sometimes. But I feel like in 20 years, like look back 1999, like we've come so far. I didn't think I'd ever be ordering McDonald's from a robot, so it's like there's no shot that this is not going to exist deeper in 20 years. Like there's no way. Like their computers are going to definitely be taken over. The technology is going to be absurd in 20 years. Like we got all the different stuff going on with Meta and all those different types of glasses and all this. Like there's like, I could put on some glasses right now and project like 30 TVs up on my screen on my walls. It's like, we're going to be a crazy world in 20 years. It's going to be insane. So I feel like in the future, it'll be like, it's going to be, I don't know if we'll care about cardboard as much. We'll see how that whole thing go. Maybe we all just care about authenticity because fakes are going to be like insane. I feel like at some point fake, like somebody's going to pay, hey, let's make this $2 million printer and just make really good fakes. And we're going to make millions of dollars. So I don't know. I'm concerned about a whole.
Yeah.
So, and then the other part, I feel like the cracking is probably like 1% of their sales. So it's not something they're not gonna go towards no AI. They're gonna go towards AI, just like McDonald's did, Taco Bell, to replace physical employees with a robot and increase profit margin. So it's future's coming, but it'll be a while. Like robots are going to replace umpires in baseball in 5-10 years. Like it's like they're going to get too many. They're going to get a call wrong in the World Series Game 7, and it's going to be the lights out for the umpires here really soon because you could standardize the pitching. We already review almost every close call at first base. Like it's going to be a wild world in 20 years. Like AI is going to be grading some of the stuff.
Okay, I got to add to that real quick.
Computers.
So with AI, I mean, we're talking about AI, artificial intelligence. We're talking about grading. Like, I don't want anything artificial to like thinking about my stuff. I want a true data point. I need it to be intelligent, right? If it's a 10, I need to know that that's a 10, or if it's 9, I need to know it's a 9. I don't want any like comparison weird stuff. So there's a couple of things with that, like with what you're saying. In 20 years seems much more realistic. If I work with data at work, my teams use data, like we use data points to make decisions. And you need to start building that now. If you're going to start doing it in 20 years or 5 years or whatever, like you need to be taking AI style deep data point photographs and imaging, that kind of stuff, to start building that so it can reference that, so it can go back and use the intelligence to look at. Because like you were talking about, Jake, you need a picture of a 10. Are you going to compare those data points and say, does this match it? Is it scratches? Is the center in the same? So that's like something you got to start collecting to be able to do that, right? You need a whole database and a backlog of those things so you can look at it and say, okay, is this the same? Is this the same? Is this the color is the same? Is the texture the same? Those kind of things. None of them have that. Like zero of them have. When I'm talking about data, I'm talking about millions and millions of data points, not the past 6 months, and now you can start making the decisions. Like that's not how AI works. You need an incredibly large data set to be able to play around with that stuff, which leads me to the other part. That's completely useless if you get a card that's pop 0. Yeah. How can you ever use AI on a brand new card, like a brand new Miriam that just came out? Like you have no data point to cross-reference against to use AI grading. So I just think some of it just seems unrealistic when you're talking about real, true, hard intelligence and data referencing. So just to throw a bit of logic in there based on like my detailed mind, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, I love this stuff. So like some of my favorite courses in college were like artificial intelligence, robotics, like the philosophy of artificial intelligence and all these topics. I think it's fascinating. But that's the extent of my training and knowledge. Some bachelor's degree classes and like building some stuff. So I don't know. I think Greeny is very right on that. The market, like if this costs a lot of money, there will need to be a lot of like demand, and they'll need to they need to think that it's actually going to improve. Like, so cards need to stay super relevant, and they need to feel like they're going to get a good return on their investment. And then all the money that they might put in this may not be, better spent doing something else or marketing, or just waiting for someone to design it and then PSA brands it and buys it and then use, whatever. This is the way business, technology and the amount of money it can take to start some of this. I have no idea, and I'm sure there are puzzles. And I have heard Nat Turner talk about it, and Nat says that he doesn't think it can be done. And I imagine he's talking to people who are like very knowledgeable. Like, I don't think that's coming from him. I don't think he really knows, but I think like, he's talking to people who work there, that he feels like it's a real challenge. And when you think about this, it's like, to be consistent, like super, and you can't just be like, hey guys, play around with it and it'll work like a decent amount of the time up to your satisfactory, and that's why they say, and Nat has said, combining, use maybe bringing some of that in, but then having people check it and, some sort of hybrid system. We'll see where all of that goes. But I think both of you guys, agree with both of your general feelings on it and takes, and it'll be both from a economic point of view on what it will take, and then also from probably the struggle or difficulty it would be to have something that was so effective and up to the standards that we would be comfortable with.
I like the thought. I like the thought of just throwing it into a computer and getting an accurate, specific grade. I don't think it's realistic.
Well, I think from there we'll probably start to wind down. Really appreciate you guys both coming on and taking the time. I appreciate everyone here just taking the time out of their days, evening, nights to just kind of listen to us and hang out. And really appreciate all of you guys. Hopefully this was like enjoyable and for you guys as well.
Absolutely.
Definitely go
good time, man.
Subscribe and support these guys. Great guys. I don't know if you want me to plug your Discord. It might be bigger than you already want it to be, but but there's some fun.
Pokenomics Discord. That's
Pokenomics Discord. Check it out now.
Yeah, that one you have to pay for. Oaks is free, and we go in there and hang out.
It's fun. It is fun.
My Discord, you're welcome to join mine and Dan's Discord. Dan, catch him on Collectibles. And we have a Patreon where we do monthly Zooms and do a bunch of data dives and market talks. Where Dan's full time doing this and selling and reselling cards, and I'm pretty passionate with the knowledge side and the data side, and it's part of what I love about collecting is really digging into that stuff too. So. But these guys both have channels. Please go support them, follow them, and I'll leave it, for you guys for the last word. If you want to talk about anything, say anything, and we'll have to do it again soon.
No comments there, Josh. I know what you were thinking when he said that. Don't even.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
I know what you were thinking. Thank you, Jake. That was awesome.
Definitely, yeah. Appreciate it. Slab Podcast. You don't got to go check out my channel. Just go to the podcast channel. That's where it's at.
Yeah, 100%.
I enjoy it. It's the thing it's the thing I watch the most of any other content these days, because it's just like it's just different. Like, it's just nice to hear, and I like. Selfishly, like, you guys probably want to get it bigger and grow it, but I like that it's kind of small and just people are just like hanging out and it's like people who are like super know you guys and engage. It's just those types of communities are just really nice, rather than sort of So it's
our friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Like truly, it is. It's people like you that we love and we want to interact and talk with. You guys are in the discussion. You're just not talking. Like you're in it just as much as we are. Like you're all invested in it, and that's what it feels like to me. Just a bunch of friends. So I've enjoyed it. I think I've had that feeling about videos I've watched of you with live streams and stuff. I've had that same feeling, and that is very enjoyable. So I'm flattered that you had us on. I really appreciate it again, and a second time. So thank you.
Absolutely. And I'm going to try to make an effort to hang out more in like Oak's Discord, with other people there. It was a great time hanging out there the other night. Squeaks is a crazy man. And the other people who hung in there all night, you guys are freaking nuts. And it was awesome. So I woke up, like I was hanging out with like a bunch of my favorite people in the hobby were in there. And like, I don't know, I probably stayed up pretty late, like much later than I expected. I was in there maybe, 2-3 hours. And then I woke up like 8 hours later and like half the people were still there talking, and it was like, wow, that's awesome.
I couldn't believe it.
It was almost a 24-hour voice chat in there. It was pretty good.
Crazy, dude. Crazy. All right. As far as like some people are asking for like the Discord link, Oaks, you can share it, you can reach out to him, if you want. Mine, I'll probably put it afterwards. I'll put it I'll put it down below afterwards. If people do want to join the Patreon, Dan and I, always appreciate the support. So, all right, take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.